Hello, namaste. Welcome back to Bhagavatam for Rationalists. My name is Kamalakar Gulukota. We're getting close to the end of Bhagavatam. There are 49 episodes, as I said, and we are in episode 47. We're going to consider Buddhavataram because we need to talk about it before we conclude Bhagavatam. So, Buddhavataram is the story of Buddha, which is known from Puranic sources as well as from a voluminous amount of other sources. For example, this statement Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama was born in the 7th century before Christ, BC. I cannot make a similar statement to that really about any other avatar because their particular chronology, when they lived and so forth, is shrouded in mystery in the really far far back in time. But with Buddha it is new enough that we know so much more about it, and we can make statements like that because of those voluminous other sources that I talked about. So Gautama was born to his father Shuddhodana and mother Maya Devi. He was born in what was called a Ganasangha, or a village republic, also known as a Janapada, called Kapilavastu. And his parents named him Siddhartha Gautama. When he was born, it is said that astrologers predicted two possible futures for him. One, that he'll become a great conqueror, establish a huge empire, or second, that he'll become a great monk. Now, Shuddhodana, the father, obviously had a clear preference as a politician that his son should remain in the family business, become a great politician, a great emperor, a great conqueror, and so forth. That was a strong preference for him. Well, as far as becoming a monk is concerned, Shuddhodana wasn't too enamored of that. So, what did they do? They made sure that Gautama lived in the lap of luxury. Forget about experiencing any suffering. Gautama did not even see any suffering. It is said that this was by design. Shuddhodana built the palace in which Gautama was living so that everything was soft, everything was happy, everything, there was no sadness anywhere to be seen. And in this lap of luxury, Gautama lived. He married Princess Yashodhara after he got older. They had a son whom they named Rahul, and everything appeared to be beautiful and happy from the outside. Yet, Gautama was very restless. He wanted to, he didn't know exactly what was missing, but he felt like something was missing in his life. And one day, when he was going on these chariot rides from the palace, um, it is said that he saw the four sights. According to Buddhist lore, these four sights were placed on his way by the Devas themselves. And those four sights were: first, a sick person; second, an old person; third was a dead body; and finally, the fourth was an old sadhu. So, with the sick person, the old person, and the dead body, Gautama saw a lot of misery, about worry about being sick and whether he'll be cured, worry of the old man that he was left alone and feels abandoned. Around the dead body, obviously, a lot of people in grief and crying and so forth. And then finally, there was the old sadhu. He was also old, he was also frail and dying, but he appeared content. He did not really feel any of the misery from the others. So this became something of a passion for Gautama. He decided to investigate human misery, and he decided to teach the world a way to deal with human misery. And based on the four sights that he saw, he knew that human misery wasn't about what is outside of you. It's not about whether you're sick, whether you have pain, whether you have money, you're in poverty. It's none of that, because misery is in your mind. And what is the nature of that misery and how do you deal with it? This is what Gautama set out to investigate. So he left home at the age of 29 years. And it is said he left the luxuries of palace life, and that's true. because his palace was filled with luxuries, as we said. There was not even any suffering to be seen, let alone experienced. However, he left that behind because he wanted to take responsibility for the happiness of the world. But that's not all he left behind. More controversially, he left behind family responsibilities. He left behind his wife Yashodhara and his son little Rahul. It is said that Yashodhara was supportive in the sense that she told him, "It's okay, dear, if this is what you need to do, if this is what you feel is your mission, I'll support you. Go ahead and go investigate misery." But of course, little Rahul was too young to be able to have even an opinion about it. Anyway, Gautama abandoned both of them and left. And in perhaps slightly less but equally controversial step, he also left behind his political responsibilities. His Gana Sangha, Kapilavastu, was threatened by Magadha. Magadha was this huge empire that still remained, even it was a big empire. Remember when Jarasandha was ruling it, and it was a thorn in the side of Krishna and so forth, in of Mathura. But now Magadha is also right next to Kapilavastu. That's where, Buddha was growing up. And it is said that Siddhartha had unique political skills, and he was able to talk to the emperor of Magadha, and he was able to suppress any hostilities between them. This was an everyday job that he could have taken up as the prince of Kapilavastu. But he thought of this as the problem of the here and now, something that will go away after some time. But the problem of human misery is eternal, has been there forever, and will be there as long as humanity exists. And he set for himself the problem not of the day to day political issues, but rather the eternal problem of human misery. And with that, having left home, he wandered for 6 years. He went to many gurus, two of the most preeminent gurus in the world at the time, asking them what they know about, what is their insight regarding this. He joined various bands of ascetics, he did penance, and going from his luxurious palace life, he went to the other extreme of punishing his body, of fasting, of being out in the cold, in the heart, in the rain, and so forth. Um, so he decided that neither the luxurious palace life nor this ascetic life of punishing the body was helping him any in understanding what he wanted to understand about human misery. So he found what he said was the middle way, and was living neither the luxurious life nor the very impoverished life of an ascetic. And one summer night, he sat under a peepal tree in Gaya. Remember the Gaya where Balarama came, and we said that that has been a pilgrimage site for a long time. That is where Gautama was. He sat under the peepal tree outside of the temple. He had not eaten for a few days by then. A lady who was on a pilgrimage took pity on him and gave him a big bowl of kheer. He ate that kheer, which is like a rice pudding, with a belly full. He set the bowl aside. He meditated through the night. And it is said that in the night, when the demons were fighting and preventing him from reaching an insight or a revelation, he nevertheless fought through all that in his mind and reached an insight, a revelation, which enabled Gautama to become the Buddha. And that happened at this site. This is the Bodhi tree, a people tree, today called the Bodhi tree because Buddha attained enlightenment under it. This is in Gaya, today called Bodh Gaya. And to this day, you see monks and sannyasis sitting under that tree, reaching for the insight, the revelation that Gautama had found. And what is that revelation? That there are four truths, and these are called the four noble truths in Buddhism. The first truth is that life is dukkha or sadness. Why is it dukkha or sadness? Because we are attached to things. We don't want to lose things that we have. We crave for things that we don't have. We are afraid of something that might befall us. All of these things cause life to be dukkha. But one of the root causes of all that, and this is the insight that Buddha reached, was to say it is tanha, or a craving, an excessive attachment. This word tanha is difficult to translate quickly into English, but really it means trishna, this craving that you have for things you don't have, or craving attachment to the things that you do have. These are the things that cause dukkha in your life. And so, as a logical corollary from those two noble truths, Buddha said, well, it's simple. If you want to escape dukkha, what you have to do is you have to remove tanha, you have to remove your craving. And how do you go about doing that? He established something called the Eightfold Path. Um, I won't go into the details of it. I invite you to read Buddhist scripture to find out more details about it. Suffice it to say here that that Eightfold Path is similar to Nishkama Karma we talked about when we were discussing the Gita. So, Nishkama Karma says you have to do your karma, your action, but don't be attached to the result of your action. And here it is similar. You should not have excessive attachment to anything, because having that excessive attachment causes dukkha in your life. It doesn't mean that you can't have any desire, which is often how Buddhist philosophy is often described. That's not true. What you should try to avoid is excessive attachment, because that is the route by which you are going to reach misery or dukkha in your life. So that is the same as nishkama karma. You have your goals, your I don't want to call it desires, but you can say your ultimate mission in life. You have that. Based on that, you choose what is your action, and once you've chosen your action, you do it without regard to whether the results of that action are things that you will like or not. And that's the same similar thing that is being followed here in the Eightfold Path to escape dukkha by removing tanha. So, for the rest of his life, about 50 years or so, Gautama, the Buddha, taught his insight to the world. He's also called Tathagat, as someone who, does he came or does he left. That is how it is translated. But anyhow, in the beginning, it is said that when he got his insight, the Buddha was happy enough to just revel in his insight and say, okay, my mission was to understand it, and now I understand it. But it is said that Brahma appeared to him and reminded him that his mission is not just to understand it for himself, but to actually make the whole world understand. So that is why, for the rest of his life, for the next 50 years of his life, he went around establishing monasteries, giving sermons, and allowing people to follow through on his insight and practice the insight that he had, to spread the message and to practice it. And finally, at the age of about 80 years, Buddha developed a stomach bug, possibly after eating some unclean food. But nevertheless, he blessed the Annadatta, the person who gave him the food, saying that this was the best meal he had since his enlightenment kheer. He consoled his disciples and died after having gifted all he knew to the world in the form of his sermons. One of his disciples was Ananda, who memorized all of his sermons and taught the next generation of disciples, who then taught their next generation, and so forth. And by word of mouth, and later on by written word and printed word, Buddha's message stays alive and available to this day. There are many monasteries all over the world that have stayed true to his message for greater or lesser extent. Now, the controversies of Buddha's life we already talked about. There are some controversies about Buddha himself that I would like to discuss. First, that Buddha rejected the Vedas and the Sanatana Dharma. Second, that Buddha rejected the existence of the soul and of God, this doctrine called Anatma. And finally, that Buddhist doctrine disappeared from India about the 7th century. I would say that all of these are false, they're all misconceptions. Now, you might be surprised by such an assertion, But I'd like to discuss that and cover that in the next episode. See you there. Thank you very much for your attention so far.